On the wide frontier of the 1800s, a cowboy's quiet lessons about family and homestead life awaken innocent curiosity in a young Apache woman who has never known the settler's world. When she misunderstands his words and asks a question that startles him, both are forced to confront the deeper meaning of belonging, trust, and the fragile bridge forming between their cultures. "Let's get started." The cowboy didn't answer her right away. He stood there beneath the open sky, hat in hand, caught between confusion and compassion. The young Apache woman wasn't teasing him, nor testing him. Her eyes held nothing but genuine curiosity, the kind that came from learning a world completely different from the one she was born into. He realized she had no sense of the boundaries settlers drew around subjects like families or children. To her, knowledge was knowledge. Asking was not shameful. He took a slow breath, choosing his words carefully, hoping not to make her feel foolish. She waited patiently, hands clasped in front of her, the soft wind tugging gently at the fringes of her traditional clothing. Her innocence made him strangely protective, as if the frontier, ruthless and unforgiving, might twist her earnest questions into something cruel. He stepped closer, speaking softly so she wouldn't mistake his hesitation for anger. "No," he said carefully, "it's not something anyone tries. Not like a skill or a chore. It's something that grows between two people." She blinked slowly, as if tasting the meaning of his words, still not entirely sure. Her brow furrowed with concern, and she bit her lip as though she had broken some rule she didn't know existed. The cowboy saw the worry forming in her eyes and quickly shook his head. "You didn't do anything wrong," he reassured. "It's just a complicated thing for settlers, a matter of the heart." The moment he said it, she looked up with surprise. In her culture, children were not a matter of embarrassment. They were blessings, signs of strength, gifts to the tribe. Why should speaking of them be uncomfortable? Her confusion was clear. She relaxed slightly, but her gaze held a seriousness that made him pause. "My mother told me," she said slowly, choosing her English words with care, "that life begins in the hands of the spirits, but your people do things differently, so I asked." Her voice was soft, not defensive, merely explaining her perspective. The cowboy felt a tug at his heart. She wasn't being bold. She was trying to understand settlers the way he had been trying to understand the Apache. Two worlds learning each other's truths, slowly, awkwardly, but honestly. He motioned for her to follow him toward the large cottonwood tree near the creek. The shadows were long beneath its branches, and the sound of running water helped ease the tension. They sat a small distance apart, respectful and cautious, not yet comfortable enough to close the space between them. The cowboy spoke carefully, telling her how settlers believed love, trust, and promise came before children. Her dark eyes softened as she listened, absorbing each word like someone collecting pieces of a puzzle. Finally, she nodded slowly, understanding more of his world. She tucked her legs beneath her and asked gently, "In your world, a man and woman must choose each other?" He nodded. "Yes, they choose, and that choice is meant to last." Her lips parted with quiet realization. So children come from choosing, not from duty. He almost smiled at how perfectly she phrased it. "Exactly," he said. "Choosing." She looked down at her hands, rubbing her thumb over her palm as she thought. Among her people, choices were made with the tribe in mind, with ancestors in mind, with survival in mind. The difference intrigued her. The cowboy could see her mind working, her heartbeat steady but thoughtful. He admired her bravery, her curiosity, her willingness to ask what others might mock. She glanced up again, a timid crease in her brow. "Then why do some settlers not choose?" she asked quietly. "Why are there men alone, and women alone, even when they don't want to be?" Her question was sharper than she intended, cutting deeper than he expected. He swallowed hard. "Fear," he answered honestly. "Fear of losing someone. Fear of failing them. Fear of not being enough." Her expression shifted into something warmer, gentler. "Fear makes people lonely," she murmured. He nodded again, unable to argue. She studied him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face as though trying to understand the loneliness carried in his shoulders. The wind blew softly, lifting a few strands of her hair, and she didn't move them away. Instead, she asked, "Are you one of them?" The question pierced him, not in a painful way, but in the way truth often does. He exhaled slowly. "I suppose I am," he admitted. Her soft breath caught, not with surprise, but with empathy. She shifted slightly, sitting a little closer, still respectful, but bridging the distance between them. "You teach me things," she said quietly, "about your world, about your ways, but you do not tell me about your heart." He looked away, unsure how to respond. She wasn't challenging him. She simply wanted to understand the man who had shown her patience, kindness, and safety in a world where innocence was easily damaged. He felt something stir inside him, something fragile but real. Finally, he turned back toward her. "My heart isn't simple," he said softly. "It's been bruised a little by life out here." She didn't look away. "Mine too," she whispered, surprising him. Her honesty made him see her differently, not as a curious student, not as an innocent woman asking questions, but as a human being who had known struggle, fear, and longing just as he had. Their worlds were different, but their wounds were not. The cottonwood leaves rustled above them, and for a moment the frontier felt quiet, almost gentle. She reached out, not to touch him, but to gently place her hand on the grass between them, an unspoken gesture that closed the emotional space. "If choosing makes families," she said softly, "does choosing also make healing?" He stared at her, the weight of her words sinking deep. "Sometimes," he answered. "Sometimes choosing is how healing begins." She nodded slowly, accepting his answer with the same openness she had shown since the first question she asked. There was no embarrassment in her now, only trust. The sun dipped lower, painting the plains in warm gold. They sat quietly, the silence no longer awkward but peaceful, a shared understanding settling between them like soft dust. She breathed out slowly and said, "I did not ask because I wanted a child. I asked because I wanted to know how your people grow families, so I could understand what makes them strong." Her honesty warmed him. "And now you do," he replied softly. She smiled, a small, shy curve of her lips. "Yes, now I do." Their eyes met, not in longing but in quiet recognition. Two people learning each other's worlds, step by gentle step. In that moment, he realized he wasn't teaching her alone. She was teaching him too, teaching him how to open, how to share, how to trust again. The frontier stretched wide around them, full of danger and uncertainty, but beneath the cottonwood tree, the world felt smaller, safer, held between two hearts, learning how to understand one another. And maybe, he thought, that was how families truly began. The young Apache woman kept her gaze fixed on the horizon, cheeks warm with embarrassment, the fading sunlight casting soft gold across her face. The cowboy spoke gently, choosing every word with care. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said again, reassuring her before silence could settle into shame. She pulled her red-trimmed dress tighter around her shoulders, a garment she had changed into after washing earlier. A beautifully woven piece, brighter and more refined, standing out against the dusty plains. He noticed the change, not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but in quiet appreciation of her grace. She breathed out slowly, the tension easing from her features as she understood he wasn't mocking her innocence. "My people do not hide questions," she murmured. "We ask so we can learn, but settlers, it is different." He nodded, accepting the cultural truth more deeply than before. The way she spoke, the way her eyes softened when she found understanding, it made him see how much she trusted him with her curiosity, a trust not easily earned on the frontier. "Different doesn't mean wrong," he replied softly, "just unfamiliar." Her fingers grazed the beaded hem of her new dress, tracing patterns she had stitched herself. Changing into it felt like claiming a small piece of pride after feeling foolish. The cowboy watched her. Hands move with quiet admiration. The craftsmanship was fine, each thread telling a story, each bead a memory. She lifted her chin slightly.
They rose slowly, dust brushing off their clothes, and began walking back toward the
Confidence slowly returning. "I didn't mean to embarrass you," she said. Her voice held a fragile honesty. He shook his head. "You didn't." The truth in his tone made her shoulders relax at last. The wind carried the scent of sagebrush and distant smoke. The world felt calmer now, shaped by understanding instead of confusion. She listened as he explained more, a gentle weaving of words about how settlers believed families came from bonds made long before children. She listened with the same focus she'd give to a tribal elder teaching ancient lore. Her eyes didn't blink much. They absorbed. "So the heart chooses first," she whispered. "Yes," he answered. "The heart chooses before the world does." Something flickered in her expression, recognition, maybe longing. They moved closer to the creek, where fireflies had begun to glow in tiny bursts of light. The soft shimmer reflected on the bright red of her dress, making her look almost ethereal against the gathering dusk. She touched the water's surface with her fingertips, watching the ripples stretch outward. "In my tribe, a woman chooses strength," she said quietly. "Not just a man, a future, protection, wisdom, a good life." She paused, then looked at him thoughtfully. "Love comes later, sometimes it comes suddenly, sometimes never. But the choice, that always comes first." He listened with genuine interest, realizing he knew so little of the world she came from. Her words had weight, not heavy, but meaningful. They made the frontier feel bigger, richer, more layered than he had understood before. "We choose differently," he said, "but we still choose." She considered that for a long moment, her brows knitting in soft thought. "Maybe our worlds aren't so far apart," she said finally. He smiled faintly. "Maybe not." The spark in her eyes brightened, and the connection between them deepened in quiet, unspoken ways. A cool breeze swept through, tugging at her hair and the loose fringe of her dress. She pushed a strand behind her ear and glanced at him shyly. "When I asked about how settlers make children," she murmured, "I didn't think it would be something shameful. I thought it was knowledge, like planting crops or building fires." Her honesty was disarming. He nodded slowly. "It's not shameful," he promised. "People just treat it as something private. But the meaning behind it, that's what matters." She absorbed that, her eyes softening as understanding grew. "Meaning," she repeated, tasting the word with new respect. "Belonging comes from meaning, not from trying." He felt a warmth rise in his chest at how beautifully she rephrased it. As the last of the sunlight faded, the evening shadows wrapped gently around them. She sat closer now, not touching, but near enough that he could feel her presence like a
The cowboy didn't.
steady heartbeat. It wasn't closeness born of innocence anymore. It was closeness made of trust.
And sometimes, the strongest families begin with nothing more than a question.
Trust she had chosen to offer him freely, deliberately, the way her people chose courage. He glanced at her profile, illuminated by the faint light of the rising moon. Her red dress glowed softly in the twilight, its renewed color giving her an almost regal appearance. "You know," he said softly, "asking questions is how people learn to understand each other, cultures, hearts, everything." She looked up with a small smile, her earlier embarrassment completely gone now. "Then I am learning," she whispered, "and learning feels good." Her words made him chuckle quietly. The sound eased something inside her, something that had been tight since her misunderstanding. She turned her face toward him fully, eyes warm, steady, and open. "You teach me with patience," she said softly. "That makes the learning easier." He swallowed, taken aback by the sincerity in her voice. "You make it easy to teach," he replied. "You're brave enough to ask things most people are afraid to say." Her soft smile deepened, pride flickering in her gaze. "Bravery is all I have sometimes," she admitted. "The world is large. I'm still learning where I belong in it." He nodded. "So am I." A silence settled, but it was no longer awkward. It was peaceful, almost comforting. The sky above them was now scattered with stars, shimmering like the beads on her dress. She folded her hands in her lap and gazed upward. Families grow from meaning," she said gently. "Then maybe meaning grows from moments like this." His breath caught slightly, not in surprise, but in quiet awe. She wasn't naive. She wasn't helpless. She was thoughtful, wise in her own way, and full of a kind of honesty he rarely saw in settlers or Apache alike. He shifted slightly, leaning back on his hands and watching her. "Moments like this matter," he admitted. "Small steps, honest words." She nodded slowly, her expression tender and contemplative. "Then I'm glad I asked," she whispered. He smiled softly. "And I'm glad I answered." For a long while they watched the stars, side by side, sharing a calmness the frontier seldom offered. In that stillness, a seed of connection took root, not romance, not desire, but the possibility of something meaningful, something growing from two worlds meeting in the middle. The night deepened, but neither of them felt the cold. Instead, they felt a quiet strength forming between them. She wrapped her arms around herself, not from discomfort, but from reflection. "I asked about children," she said softly, "but what I truly wanted to know was how your people build forever." He looked at her with newfound understanding. "Forever is built the same way in every world," he said, "by choosing someone over and over again." Her breath hitched slightly, not in surprise but in realization. "Then maybe our worlds are closer than I thought." They rose slowly, dust brushing off their clothes, and began walking back toward the homestead. The moonlight caught the red of her dress, making it gleam like ember against the dark. She glanced at him with a shy but steady gaze. "Thank you," she said softly. He smiled back. "For what?" Her voice warmed with quiet truth. "For helping me belong in a world that is not mine, yet." His heart tightened with something gentle. The path before them was long, uncertain, and filled with differences, but tonight they had found a bridge. And sometimes the strongest families begin with nothing more than a question, asked innocently and an answer given kindly beneath the open sky.